There is a psychological glitch inside every human brain on Earth. It was discovered by accident in a farm field in upstate New York in 1869. And once you understand how it works, you will never be able to read a news headline, scroll through social media, or watch a political debate the same way again. Because this glitch is not a bug in human cognition that we are still trying to fix. It is a feature that someone figured out how to weaponize, and the weapon has been aimed at you every single day for the last 20 years. Here is the glitch. When a human being is told that something they believe is false, a specific region of the brain activates that does not activate when they simply receive new information. The belief does not weaken, it strengthens. The challenge does not create doubt, it creates certainty. Psychologists call this the backfire effect, and the first documented large-scale proof that it existed did not happen in a laboratory. It happened at a farm in Cardiff, New York, in October of 1869, when a farmer named Stub Newell hired men to dig a well in his field, and 12 inches below the surface they hit something that changed the psychological history of the human race. Stone, but not ordinary stone, the shape of a man, 10 feet tall, carved in extraordinary anatomical detail, lying on its back with one hand resting across its stomach as if sleeping. The Cardiff Giant had been found. Word spread within hours. By the next morning, there were wagons lined up for half a mile along the road leading to Newell's farm. People had come from neighboring counties, then from neighboring states. Within a week, Newell was charging 50 cents per person to view the giant. Within 2 weeks, the price had doubled. The lines never got shorter. Newspapers across the country ran front-page stories. Scientists traveled from Yale, from Harvard, from institutions across the eastern seaboard to examine the figure. Ministers began preaching sermons about it. The Bible references giants. Genesis 6:4. There were giants on the earth in those days. Here was the proof. Here's where the story becomes psychologically extraordinary. Several scientists examined the Cardiff Giant and declared almost immediately that it was a fake. The tool marks were too precise for ancient stone. The chemical weathering was inconsistent with genuine age. The anatomy, while impressive, showed knowledge of human musculature that suggested a trained sculptor rather than an ancient civilization. They said this publicly, loudly, in newspapers read by hundreds of thousands of people, and the crowds got bigger, not smaller, bigger. The more loudly the scientific establishment declared the Cardiff Giant a hoax, the more people paid to see it. The more people defended its authenticity. The more ministers cited it from their pulpits. The more letters flooded into newspapers from ordinary citizens insisting that the scientists were wrong. A Yale paleontologist named Othniel Charles Marsh examined the giant and published a detailed technical analysis concluding definitively that it was a carved gypsum statue of recent manufacture. Stub Newell's farm had more visitors the week after Marsh's report than any previous week. Now here's where the real story begins. Because the Cardiff Giant was indeed a hoax. A spectacular, carefully planned, brilliantly executed hoax organized by a man named George Hull. Hull was a cigar manufacturer from Binghamton, New York. He was also an atheist who had recently gotten into an argument with a Methodist minister about the literal interpretation of the Bible's references to giants. Hull left that argument freest, and then he had an idea. He traveled to Fort Dodge, Iowa, where he knew there were large deposits of gypsum stone. He hired a crew, quarried a massive block, swore them to secrecy, and transported it by rail to Chicago, where he hired a German sculptor named Edward Saal to carve it into the shape of a petrified man. Saale spent 3 months on the carving. Hull then had the surface treated with sulfuric acid to simulate age and weathering. Thousands of tiny holes were drilled into the surface and filled with sand to simulate the texture of genuine fossilized skin. Then the giant was transported by wagon to the farm of Hull's cousin Stub Newell in Cardiff, New York, and buried, and left for a year to settle into the soil before Newell conveniently hired men to dig a well directly over the spot where it was buried. The operation cost Hull approximately $2,600. His profit in the first few months of exhibition exceeded $30,000, but Hull had not predicted what happened next. He had not predicted that the scientific debunking would make the hoax more profitable rather than less. He had stumbled, without knowing the terminology, onto the backfire effect. And the most interesting person in this entire story is not George Hull, it is P.T. Barnum. Phineas Taylor Barnum was at this point already the most successful showman in American history. He had built his entire career on a precise understanding of one psychological principle, that human beings are more attracted to something they have been told is fake than to something they have been told is real. He called it the humbug principle. When Barnum heard about the Cardiff Giant and its extraordinary profitability, he immediately approached the syndicate that had purchased the exhibition rights from Hull and offered to buy it outright for $60,000. They refused. So Barnum did something that should be studied in every psychology and marketing department on Earth. He hired a sculptor to create an exact replica of the Cardiff Giant, and then he exhibited the replica, not secretly, not pretending it was real. He told the public explicitly that his version was a copy, that the original Cardiff Giant was itself a fake, and that his copy of the fake was therefore the only honest exhibit available, because it was a fake of a fake, which made it more genuinely authentic than the original deception. The public did not find this confusing. They found it irresistible. Barnum's replica drew larger crowds than the original. Newspapers ran editorials trying to explain to readers the logical impossibility of paying to see a copy of a hoax that had already been proven false. The editorials made no difference. If anything, they drove more people through the door. A Connecticut newspaper ran the headline, "Which Giant is the real fake?" and both exhibitions reported their highest attendance numbers of the entire run in the days following its publication. This is the moment where 1869 and 2024 collapse into each other, because what Barnum had discovered empirically, without any formal psychological framework to explain it, is something that neuroscientists spent the following century and a half trying to understand at a biological level. And what they found is deeply uncomfortable. The human brain does not process belief the way we think it does. We assume that belief is a conclusion, that we examine evidence, weigh it rationally, and arrive at a position that we hold until better evidence comes along. This is not how it works. Belief is a structural component of identity. When you believe something, you do not just hold a position. You incorporate that position into your understanding of who you are. Your beliefs are not things you have. They are part of what you are. And this means that when someone challenges a belief, the brain does not experience it as an invitation to update a position. It experiences it as a threat to the self. And the brain responds to threats to the self exactly the way it responds to physical danger. It activates the amygdala. It releases cortisol and adrenaline. It narrows perception and shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational evaluation of evidence. In other words, the biological response to having your belief challenged is the precise opposite of what would be required to rationally evaluate the challenge. The more clearly and forcefully you are told that something you believe is wrong, the less neurologically capable you become of assessing whether it actually is wrong. This is not stupidity. This is not weakness. This is not a failure of education or intelligence. This is a feature of human cognition that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to protect group cohesion, to prevent individuals from being manipulated away from their tribe by enemy persuaders. It worked extraordinarily well for most of human history. And then the internet arrived. In 2018, researchers at MIT published a study in the journal Science that analyzed the spread of true and false information on Twitter across a data set of roughly 126,000 stories shared by approximately 3 million people between 2006 and 2017. The findings were not what the researchers expected. False information spread faster, further, deeper, and more broadly than true information in every single category they examined. Not slightly faster, significantly faster. The average false story reached 1,500 people 6 times faster than the average true story. And false stories were 70% more likely to be retweeted than true stories. But here's the finding that stopped the research team cold. When they controlled for the effect of automated bots, the gap did not close. It widened. Human beings, without any algorithmic assistance, were spreading misinformation faster than truth by a factor that the researchers described as deeply alarming. And when they investigated why, they found what Barnum had found in 1869. False information is more novel than true information. True information tends to confirm what people already know. It fits existing frameworks. It does not surprise. False information tends to violate expectations. It surprises. It shocks. It triggers the same neurological response as physical novelty, which is the release of dopamine. The brain rewards you for encountering something surprising, and a lie, by definition, is always more surprising than the truth it is replacing. Now add the backfire effect. When someone tries to correct the false information, the correction activates the identity threat response. The belief strengthens. The corrected person often goes on to share the original false information more widely after the correction than they did before it. The correction becomes the accelerant. And now add algorithmic amplification. The social media platforms discovered in their engagement data exactly what Barnum discovered in his box office returns in 1869. Content that provokes strong emotional responses drives more engagement than content that does not. Content that confirms identity drives more engagement than content that challenges it. Content that surprises drives more engagement than content that is expected. False information checks all 3 boxes simultaneously, and the algorithms were designed, not through malice, but through the pure optimization of engagement metrics to show you more of whatever made you engage most intensely, which meant they were designed at a structural level to preferentially amplify exactly the content most likely to trigger the backfire effect. The Cardiff Giant went viral in 1869 because newspapers were the algorithm, and the newspaper editors discovered that stories about the Giant, including the debunking stories, sold more papers than stories about anything else. The mechanism was identical. The scale was just smaller. Here's the twist that I have been building toward. George Hull confessed. In November of 1869, under legal pressure from the exhibition syndicate that had purchased the Cardiff Giant, Hull publicly admitted that the entire thing was a fabrication. He explained the process in detail. He named the sculptor. He showed receipts from the Iowa quarry. He provided documentation of every step of the operation. The confession was published in newspapers across the country. Attendance at Cardiff Giant exhibitions, both the original and Barnum's replica, did not decrease. It increased. And several of the visitors who went to see the Giant after the public confession told reporters that they did not believe the confession, that Hull had been pressured into it, that the real Giant was being suppressed by scientific and religious establishments that did not want the biblical evidence acknowledged. The confession became evidence of a cover-up. The debunking became proof of authenticity. The more completely the hoax was exposed, the more fervently a portion of the audience believed in it. In 1869, without social media, without algorithms, without recommendation engines or filter bubbles or coordinated information campaigns, just the human brain, doing exactly what it was built to do. And the question that I cannot stop thinking about is this: if this was the scale of the psychological phenomenon in 1869, when the only distribution mechanism was a newspaper printed once a day and read by people who had to physically hold it in their hands, what is the scale now, when the distribution mechanism operates at the speed of light, when the algorithm has mapped the specific identity frameworks of 3 billion individual users and serves each of them a precisely personalized stream of content optimized to maximize the emotional intensity of their engagement, when the backfire effect is not an accidental byproduct of public curiosity, but the designed operating principle of the most powerful information distribution systems ever built. The Cardiff Giant is still in existence. It is displayed at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York. You can go and see it, a 10-foot carved gypsum figure lying on its back, one hand across its stomach. It looks exactly like what it is, a very impressive fake, and every year people stand in front of it and feel something, not certainty that it is false, something more complicated than that, something that feels like the ghost of a question that never quite got fully answered. That feeling is not nostalgia, that feeling is the backfire effect, still running after 155 years, in a brain that has not fundamentally changed since the day a farmer's shovel hit stone in a field in upstate New York. And the most important thing you can do with that knowledge is not to feel immune to it. Nobody is immune to it. The most important thing you can do is to feel it working, to notice the moment when a challenge to something you believe creates heat in your chest instead of curiosity in your mind. That heat is not evidence that you are right. That heat is the Cardiff Giant, still being exhibited, still drawing crowds, still making someone very wealthy. The question is whether you are the audience, or whether for the first time you are something else, the person standing outside the tent, watching the line, and finally understanding what they are actually paying to see. If that kind of buried psychological truth, the kind that changes how you see your own mind, is what you come here for, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, because the next one is even stranger, and nobody has made a video about it yet.